not too long ago, and you said that the government needs to get this right or there'll be more coffins coming home. Do you think they've got it right today?
I think it's a very good start. I think what is important is that we understand that this is not just a cost-cutting exercise. Of course, it comes at a time of heavy financial crisis, but what we are looking at is some clever thinking frankly that should have gone on 10 years ago under the Labour government to prepare us for the wars of the future, or the conflicts of the future, and not the wars of the past, which has so often been the temptation with previous governments.
Because you wrote a piece this morning saying that the MOD, maybe wishful thinking, the MOD should see this as an opportunity, not as a challenge. Just talk me through that argument.
Yeah, I mean, every few years, the Ministry of Defence, or whatever horse guards in the 19th century, doesn't matter, but they're faced with the prospect of rejigging themselves, reorganising themselves for what lies in the future. For instance, Haldane in 1908, he understood that large numbers of troops and large numbers of ships at sea were going to be necessary for whatever European conflicts lay in the future. That's why we actually acquitted ourselves pretty well at the start of the First World War. And there are other examples that I could bore you with, but I won't. We've now got the chance to understand that the future conflicts are not going to be about serried rows of tanks and serried rows of aircraft and serried rows of artillery pieces facing each other and beating the living daylights out of one another. In the future, now, small numbers of capable individuals are able to wreak damage out of all proportion to their size and capability. So we have got to understand that the theatres of war are not just going to be land, sea and air, but also cyberspace and indeed outer space. Now's the chance for the Ministry of Defence to gear themselves to take on these threats effectively.
As far as I understand the figures, it's 42,000 people out of work, sorry. And you're from a forces background yourself. Do you think your ex-colleagues are going to be seeing these cuts in the same light that you do?
Well, do bear in mind, I came from the combat part of the army. I'm very proud of that, and I don't think there's any combat forces that are going to be touched by this. I regret that civil servants, etc., will see their jobs disappearing, and there are going to be other rationalisations inside the armed forces. But much of the armed forces is run in a very expensive fashion, particularly at the upper echelons. That has got to be cut down to size if we're not to betray the men and women that actually do the fighting for us.
And one final one, a lot of this was expected and some of it came out this morning. Any surprises in there for you this afternoon? Anything that you didn't expect to see?
None at all, no. I'm disappointed that the government so far is sticking to its headline figure of 7,000 reduction in army numbers. And here's a bet for you, that the moment that we start withdrawing from Afghanistan and Pakistan, that there is a need for another military intervention somewhere else. Those are the lessons of history.